So,
I'll just make you spotlighted.
okay. Thanks. Thanks very much, Adele. So, hi everyone, my name's Jennifer. I'm one of the Helpline specialist nurses, and I've been with the MS Society now for just over 2 years. I started on the first day of lockdown, so I always remember the day that I've started. Prior to working on the Helpline, I've worked and supporting people with MS since about 1997 in various roles. So I've had worked for the NHS as an MS specialist nurse, and I've also worked supporting people at home who are taking disease modifying therapy. So quite a variation in roles, but enjoying my time with the MS Society. So if you ever phone, it's probably myself or Razia, who's the other nurse that you'll speak to. So tonight I've been asked to talk about fatigue. I'm just going to share my screen. And okay, that. Can everybody see that? Okay, has that come up? Hopefully it has. I'm sure if it's not, people will let me know. So yeah, it's probably about half an hour. I'll talk about fatigue. A lot of it's going to be information that some of you may already know, but hopefully along the way there will be some tips and some useful information. And after it, if there's questions, or even if people want to share some of their tips as to how they manage fatigue, that would also, I'm sure, be useful. So what is fatigue? So the definition of fatigue, it's different to normal tiredness, and it's a condition that's marked by extreme tiredness is probably the best way to describe it. But on top of that, it's the inability to function just due to the sheer lack of energy. And it can be acute. So sometimes it may just be there temporarily, but sometimes it can also be chronic, and it's something that people have to deal with either on a day-to-day basis or, you know, a long-term basis. What does it feel like? So people will describe it in different ways. If you feel free to put how you want to describe it yourself in the chat function. I've heard people say it can feel like wading through water. It can be almost like you're wearing wet, heavy clothes and everything feels like an effort. Some people say it feels like the battery has just been drained, or the plug's been unplugged and there's just nothing left. So although it's probably common to talk about fatigue, and it may be that somebody says, oh, I get tired too, but it is very different to tiredness. And generally with MS fatigue, it's not relieved by rest or sleep. So it is a very, very different feeling to a normal tiredness. And tonight I'm not going to be here and claim to have all the answers, because it is a very complex symptom, and the causes of it can be quite complex as well, and sometimes quite poorly understood. And that can be poorly understood by healthcare professionals, but also by poorly understood by maybe family, friends, sometimes employers, because it's an invisible symptom. So you may look fine, you may not look fatigued, but you can feel absolutely exhausted. So it can be quite difficult when symptoms are invisible to get people to understand them as well. But MS fatigue, it can be broken down into two types of fatigue. So we have primary fatigue and we have secondary fatigue. Primary fatigue, that's thought to be, and I say thought to be because although we know there's a lot of knowns, there are still quite a lot of unknowns, but it's thought to be due to the damage in the central nervous system. And they think possibly because the brain, if there are any lesions, the brain tries to find some new routes to navigate around areas of damage. And when that happens, it's using up a lot more energy. So it's not something you would be aware of, but you know, where there are lesions or areas of damage, the brain tries to find new routes to deliver those messages to different parts of the body. So that can be what the cause of primary fatigue is. And what that can cause is lassitude, so just a complete lack of energy. Heat sensitivity, this might be something that a lot of people have experienced lately with the extreme weather. So heat sensitivity is where a rise in body temperature just brings the energy levels down. And they say even a slight rise in body temperature can be enough to either block or disrupt messages where there are areas of damage. So you can see how last week where the weather was quite extreme and also didn't really cool down at night time, why a lot of people did find that fatigue was worse. And of course, if fatigue's worse, it can also worsen existing MS symptoms as well. Short circuit fatigue, that's where if you were doing any activity, if you'd been at the gym, a walk, a run, or just been active in some way, it can cause a bit of a short circuit. So it may be after a certain period, the fatigue can kick in, but generally with a bit of rest for a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it may be, then the fatigue levels kind of come back to or resolve, and you can go back to normal activity. So it's a bit of a short circuit scenario, but also cognition. So physically, we know fatigue can affect people, but it's also thought processes. Things like brain fog or word finding difficulties, it can have an impact on concentration, memory, and just general thought processes as well. So it's not just a feeling of being tired, it can affect your function in many ways. And secondary fatigue, so this is more where other MS symptoms or even just the impact of living with MS can have an impact on fatigue. And I've just listed a few things that could be possible reasons for secondary fatigue. And that could be things like low mood, pain. So if you're having to live with pain, if you don't sleep well because of things like pain, or even bladder symptoms, if you're having to get up during the night to go for a pee often, then the interrupted sleep can then have an impact on fatigue the next day, or even just the energy to have to go if there was an urgency or frequency to go to the toilet. You're using up energy that you maybe wouldn't necessarily be using. Diet as well. So we know diet plays a part. So if your diet's not too good or you're not drinking enough fluids, then that can certainly contribute to fatigue. Infections, and that can really be any type of infections. It could be bladder infection, COVID, cold, flu, whatever it may be. There is an increase in fatigue generally if there's an active infection. Often when people are going through a relapse, fatigue can be a very common symptom that people experience on top of any other neurological symptoms. And sometimes that fatigue can linger a bit as well. And again, that could be down to if there's inflammation with new lesions and your brain's trying to find new paths or even just deal with inflammation, that fatigue can be more troublesome. And it may be during a relapse that you can't do as much as you would normally do or would like to do, but with time and with recovery, hopefully the fatigue levels would begin to lessen. Inactivity, we'll talk a little bit about that later, and it can seem a bit, if you're fatigued, how are you going to be active? But we do know that keeping active can help with fatigue. And so if there's a spell of inactivity, that can actually make fatigue feel worse. Another thing that might be worthwhile taking into consideration are side effects of medications. A lot of the medications for MS, and it could be things like muscle relaxants, for pain as well, they can have an effect on energy levels. Some of them might even have a sedative type effect into the next day if you take them at night time. So sometimes it's worth just maybe speaking with the GP or your MS team to say, are any of these medications contributing to the fatigue? It may not be the only cause, but if there's anything that can help, then it's certainly worth having a look at. So the impact of fatigue, well, it can impact on everything in life. First of all, it can worsen MS symptoms. So MS symptoms can be interlinked, and if fatigue is bad, then it's not uncommon for everything else to feel worse as well. So generally, if being able to manage one symptom a bit better can have a positive effect on others. And fatigue is a good example of that. If fatigue could be managed a bit better, then the hope is you would see an improvement in some other symptoms. It can have a great impact on things like work. Sometimes even getting up, getting ready and getting to work can use up a lot of energy, never mind doing a full day's work. And it's not uncommon for people to say by the end of the working week, that's it, they're spent and have no more energy left. Some people even say they spend the weekends in bed recovering and preparing for the following week, which is not great because it's a huge impact if that's what's happening. It might even have an impact on your ability to do work. So depending on what your work is, if you're finding that things like cognition's affected because of fatigue, then that can have an impact on work. But it can also have a knock-on effect on leisure activities. You might not have the energy to go out and socialise, take the kids to places. It really can be difficult sometimes just to plan ahead or know what you're going to feel like on the day if you have things planned. So that has an effect on family life as well as maybe relationships with friends as well, potentially. And things like, going down to things even like sex life, if you've no energy, again, that can have a big impact on relationships. And it's not very pleasant to live like that. So it's not surprising that that can have an impact on moods and then just your ability to cope with symptoms. But that's not an exhaustive list, as I'm sure a lot of people will be able to share. It can have a huge impact. So being able to understand fatigue and manage it a bit better, it's certainly something that can have a positive effect on life. So the question is, what can be done to help manage fatigue? And there are a few things. So there are some things to consider, and there is support out there. But I think the key thing is that it's not an overnight fix, and it can sometimes take a little bit of changing in how you think, but also the way that you maybe do things as well, which can be difficult because if you've always done something in a certain way or within a certain time, having to adapt can be one of the most difficult things to do. But it's sometimes good just to sort of maybe take a step back and think about what you do on a day-to-day basis and see if there's any ways that can be changed. So a fatigue or an activity diary can be a good starting point. Just being able to record things like your fatigue levels in relation to any activities that you do. And it doesn't have to be a long diary, it can just be bullet points, and over time you can see if there's any pattern to things that you do. And that could be even, when after you go for a shower, are you flagging, or do you need to sit down for a couple of minutes to recoup some energy? Getting to work, if it's exercise. So it's really just finding out what affects your fatigue levels to see if you can identify any patterns that can help. But it can make you think about how you do activities. So it'll help to think about, do you need to incorporate rest periods into it? Prioritising tasks as well. So what needs to be done and what can wait. It might also make you think about organising how your home is, or even your workspace, if it helps to manage activities as well. Can help think about healthy eating. Can also help you think about the types of exercise, or even wanting to become a bit more active if possible. And the one thing that probably a lot of us are not very good at doing is asking for help if you need it. And that can really make a big difference, just getting that support from people. But yeah, it can sometimes be difficult to, sometimes even to recognise that a bit of help would be good. So there are some online templates for fatigue diaries, but you could just, if you wanted to jot it in a notepad, or if you've got an app, some of the MS symptom apps can be quite good as well. So whatever works for you. But the goal of it is really to try and see if there's any correlation between what you do and your fatigue levels to help try and manage that a bit better. And the key is really to try and be energy efficient. And I think sometimes there's if you're waking up in the morning and you've got a bit of energy, the plan might be, right, let's get things done while the energy's there. But the danger of that is you can go into a bit of a boom and bust scenario. So you may go and do whatever the activity is and then hit a brick wall. And then it could be the rest of the day is a bit of a write-off. So it's trying to plan, maybe even just plan ahead to say, well, the next day, whatever needs to be done, just plan what can be done, and prioritizing comes into that as well. So it's really the things that are the most important things to get done. But it's pacing yourself when you're doing the activities. So instead of trying to get it done within a certain time frame, it might just be a case of thinking, well, do one activity. If you need to take a break, recharge, and then go on to the next. Although it might take a bit longer for the task to be done, it may just help to conserve your energy. In the morning when you're waking up, you'll have a certain amount of energy. And once you start using that up, if it gets used up too quickly, the energy levels could potentially be used up by lunchtime, when you've still got the rest of the day ahead. So planning what needs to be done, prioritizing it, delegation. So if you've got people at work that can maybe do things, if you've got family, friends, it's maybe just saying, could they help with some things, or even help you do it if they don't need to do the full task, and that can certainly take a bit of pressure off you as well. Eating healthy, so there's probably a lot of specialist diets, and some people will go on various specialized diets. There's not really any evidence to say that there's one diet that will suit everyone with MS. And the general advice is really to have as varied a diet as possible, to eat as healthily as possible, try and avoid a lot of processed foods, and drink plenty of fluids as well. So having a healthy diet can certainly, anything that's good for your general health, can help with MS as well. Exercise, which we'll talk a little bit about, and that's quite important. And it doesn't have to be joining a gym. It can be even incorporating household chores or tasks, and make them part of exercise. So it's regular activity has been found to be beneficial for fatigue. So it's finding something that's realistic, but enjoyable as well, and something that can even be incorporated into day-to-day life, again, can help. And the power nap, don't be afraid of a power nap. It's fine to stop. It's fine to have a little nap. Probably don't do enough of it, but a power nap can do the world of good. It may not take fatigue away completely, but it can be a little bit of a recharge. And if a power nap helps during the day, then yeah, it's something that it can be incorporated. Appreciate if you're working, it's difficult. You can't always go and have a power nap in the office or your place of work, but yeah, it's when you come home, or if you're at home, yeah, it can be quite good just to have a recharge. So these are some of the things to think about. The key thing is to try and think about the energy levels you have and not use them up too quickly. Pacing yourself, prioritizing, and if it doesn't need to be done that day, can it wait until tomorrow as well? So with exercise, it's, I suppose, one of the important things is to try and find an activity that you enjoy, because if you're going to stick to it and do it regularly, you want to be enjoying it. It's a good idea to incorporate rest periods into exercise. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes you can get that short circuit where if you do too much, it may be that the fatigue can kick in. So trying to incorporate rest periods into exercise before you get to that point can be good. And that might just take a little bit of trial and error. So it may be that you find there is a point where you can rest before you run out of energy. And some days may be different than others. So there might be days you have a bit more energy and some days you don't. Having rest days is important as well. So although we're talking about regular activity, it's good to have rest days and a day to recharge. When it comes to exercise, is set realistic goals. So it's not that you have to say that you want to run a marathon or swim so many lanes. It's what's going to be realistic for you, and it can sometimes be a gradual thing, especially if exercise isn't something that you have done a lot of. So setting realistic goals and building on that until you get to a level where you feel it is enough for you. If you can exercise with a friend or a group, that can be really useful. It can help with motivation, because sometimes it can be a bit of I've got to go and do a bit of exercise, that sort of feeling that it's something else to do during the day. But if you've got a friend, family or a group, it motivates you. And also sometimes if you're going or doing exercise with somebody else, you kind of don't want to let them down. So it can be a reason to do it as well. And try, if possible, to exercise when energy levels are at your highest. So if you're feeling at the end of a working day that you just don't have any energy left, it might not be the best time to do it. If you find that heat is affecting your fatigue levels, then it might be some water-based exercise could be good for that. And that could be either swimming at leisure centres. I know a lot of people have found that wild swimming, like cold water swimming, I know a lot of people find that beneficial. Aqua aerobics, whatever it may be. So that can help if you find heat does affect your fatigue levels and fatigues you quicker. And keep hydrated. So always have some drinks with you. That can certainly help while you're exercising. And like I said earlier, so if you don't have to do any sort of exercise in the traditional sense, you can make gardening count. You can make sweeping, wiping the work surfaces, doing exercises while you're waiting on the kettle boil, whatever it may be. You can incorporate day-to-day household tasks into exercise. And our physical activity specialists on the helpline, they're really good at helping with suggestions for exercise, but also they're actually quite good at helping to identify any household tasks and how you may be able to incorporate exercises into things that we do every day, so it's one thing less to do. So to get in touch with our physical activity specialist, if you wanted to get any tips for exercise, you can just contact them through our MS helpline. And you can also email the helpline inbox if you wanted to speak to them, and they would be more than happy. The other thing they can do is they can offer regular calls if you just want to get a bit of support with exercise or see how you're getting on. Then they can also do follow-up calls. So that can be quite useful, especially if you wanted to get back into exercise, if you haven't done it before or even for a while, or even if symptoms have made exercise more difficult. Again, our physical activity specialists can have a good chat with you to try and help identify different ways to keep active. So there are some other treatments for fatigue as well as lifestyle management. There are some what's called the Facets program, which is a fatigue management program. Some of them are run locally, and your MS nurses should be able to let you know if there are any in your local area. And it's a 6-week fatigue management course, and a lot of people do find it really beneficial. And again, it can even be quite good if it's in person, that you're with people who and may be able to share some tips or even just share some experiences as well. So that might be worth just finding out in the area if there are any programs running and when they run. If there aren't any, or you wouldn't be able to attend any, we do have an online fatigue management course, and you can access that on the MS Society website. The easiest way to find it is just to put fatigue management course in the search box, and you'll see that there's information comes up. And with that, it's 6 sessions in total. You just put your name, email address, and that will open up one session, and then you go into the next one. there's no time frame. You do it in your own time, take as long as you want to do it. There is a bit of guidance and what's recommended for the length of time that it should take, but again, you can go back and review it again as well. So that can be quite useful just to have a look at, to get a bit more of an understanding of fatigue and ways to manage it as well. And other healthcare professionals that may be able to help can be people like physiotherapists and occupational therapists. So it may be worth, if you do see any of these healthcare professionals, to have a word with them, or again with your MS nurse if you could be referred, just to see if there's anything that they can help to identify that might help with managing fatigue. And it could be even things like, so if there was any mobility difficulties, and a physio could assess that to try and improve mobility, then you may be using less energy than you were to walk and mobilise, and that all these little things can have an impact. The other thing is there are some medications that some people find help with fatigue. There's a medication that probably the most common one is amantadine, and some people find that can help manage fatigue. It would worth speaking to the MS team about it. It tends to be a combination of lifestyle and medication, so it's not a quick fix that will take fatigue away completely, but there are options for medications as well as lifestyle too. So yeah, it's just have a word if you feel that you're doing everything and the fatigue still isn't really improving, then it might be worth speaking to the MS team to see if medication could be an option and if that would be helpful. And yeah, that was just the fatigue management course that we were talking about. So yeah, it's certainly worth it. It's free, you don't have to pay for it. So if nobody's had a look at it, it's certainly worth having a look to see if it would be helpful if you can't manage to go to a local facets course. And so that's really a sort of overview of fatigue, and I was just going to hand over to see if there's any questions or if people wanted to share any tips or experiences that can help. That would be useful as well. So I'll just stop sharing the screen now.
Thanks for that, Jen. We have got a couple of questions.
Okay.
We did have.
Disappeared.
Oh, so Sally said when she was able to walk up the stairs, she used to find energy tablets made it so much faster.
So would that be the prescribed medication?
Not sure, she doesn't say.
Might be.
Yeah.
So that if it's, say for example, it was amantadine or one of the medications that can be prescribed, then yes, that's where some people do find it's beneficial. So it's maybe worth asking.
Yes. And we question from Joy, can someone have fatigue and not MS?
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of reasons that people can have fatigue. It could be other health conditions can cause fatigue. It could be even short illnesses. So COVID is a great example of that. A lot of people are finding that fatigue is a lingering symptom of, so certainly infections, but it can be quite common for other health conditions.
Yeah. And Gren is asking, what does PAS stand for?
Oh, sorry. So PAS or PAS is a physical activity specialist. And that's the physical activity specialist who work on the helpline, who can help with keeping active, finding new ways to keep active. They can also help give advice about things like weight loss, fatigue. So it's all about, activity that they're able to help with. But we just call them PAS for short, so physical activity specialist.
Great, thanks. And Laura's asking, how long is the ideal power nap?
I think that probably can be different for different people. Sometimes if you sleep too long, you can sometimes waken up and feel a bit too groggy. So For some people, it might be a 10-minute power nap, and for others, it might be a half hour. I think it's finding what works for you. But the danger is you don't want to sleep all afternoon and miss the day. So maybe just setting an alarm and just having a recharge. And it might not even be that you sleep. Sometimes just resting, taking time out, sitting in a quiet room, shutting your eyes, but it might not be an actual deep sleep, but just taking that bit of time out can be enough to try and recharge the battery.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. Alison's asking, do you have any tips for primary fatigue? Exercise is terrible for this type. It just makes me feel so much worse.
So I think when it comes to primary fatigue, because it's thought to be due to the damage in the nervous system and the brain trying to find ways to navigate around those areas of damage, certainly treatments like disease modifying therapies, their goal is to try and reduce the inflammation and prevent new lesions, prevent relapses from happening. So although it's not a treatment as such for fatigue, by trying to manage and lessen the damage that's there, then DMTs can certainly help with that. If it was a relapse, steroids help to calm down inflammation and speed up the recovery of a relapse. So it's probably more about trying to manage MS as a whole when it comes to primary fatigue, to try and lessen the damage being done or prevent the damage being done.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks. And Sally's just come back to say the energy tabs weren't prescribed, they were tubes from Asda.
All right, okay.
Tablets, and they worked very fast, so
right.
that might be helpful for some other people. And Gren has thanked you for clarifying what PAS was. And then we've got a question from Molly. Is there any online exercise classes available? She's sure she saw something, but she might be wrong.
No, there are. So a lot of local branches or local groups will do online exercises. If you were to go onto our website, mssociety.org.uk, and you search for local groups, you'll see that there is a list, or actually just put in exercise in the search box and it will come up with a lot of options. There's things from Pilates, yoga, there's lots. So yeah, there definitely are. Zoom. Lockdown, one of the things with lockdown is that there were a lot of classes being run online, so that, you know, a lot of people could be reached. So again, if you wanted to phone our physical activity specialist, they'd probably be the best person to signpost you as well if you can't find it online.
Great, thank you. And Alison's come back. Alison had asked about tips for primary fatigue. Alison has secondary progressive. So anything else?
So, I mean, there is one treatment. Well, there's more. There's the beta interferons, but there is a treatment for secondary progressive. I mean, I think a lot of it can probably be down to what we were talking about. It's conserving energy as much as possible. It can be difficult, Alison. There's not always a quick fix. I wish I could sit here and say there was, but certainly trying to pace, prioritise as much as possible, and just try and incorporate rest time in between can be helpful. So it is a bit of a combination approach between lifestyle, medications, and you know, things like exercise, activity as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. Tanya's asking, she works full-time and really struggles both physically and with her cognition. Any suggestions? So
with work, I suppose one of the things to maybe check is if your employer is aware of the impact that fatigue can have, because it's sometimes not always apparent. And if you look fine, that your employer might think you are fine. So with invisible symptoms, it's sometimes trying to make them visible. And often the way to do that is to say, this is what symptoms I have. You know, it's not that you have to share everything, but if you find there's certain things impacting at work, your employer does have an obligation to make any reasonable adjustments. So if there's anything that can be done from a work point of view, so that you're not feeling so fatigued after a day's work and, you know, then having to deal with home life as well. So it might be, if you're able to speak to your employer, just to give them some information, even signposting them to some of the information booklets on fatigue, because it can be difficult to understand. And unless you've experienced fatigue, people probably just think about it as tiredness. So sometimes being able to say, well, here's some booklets just to give you a bit of an understanding of the impact, but this is how it affects me, and this is what maybe would help me. And it might just be a bit of, explaining to people what would be beneficial for you as well.
Yeah, and there's very good guidance around that, Tanya, on our website. And if you're in Wales, you can contact any of us in the Pontio team and we can help if you need to have that conversation with your employer around making reasonable adjustments.
Yeah.
So it might just make your day easier in work, and then find you a bit more energy for when you get home.
And it can be small things like extra breaks, not having a toilet, 3 flights up, or so it can parking closer to the door. It's all these little things that can
make a difference.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. And Nick is saying he finds baclofen helps me get up and downstairs each day, but now having oh sorry, something's popped up, I can't read the question. Basically saying the efficacy is waning, is the only solution to keep increasing the dose. He's been on it for a year.
So there will be a point, there will be a maximum dose of baclofen that can be prescribed, and if you're near that, then it's maybe worth going back to the MS nurse or neurologist. There are other options for stiffness and spasms. I don't know if you've tried any of them, but it may be worth going back and finding out if there's something more suitable. Sativex, which is a cannabis-based medication, that's not a first-line treatment for muscle stiffness and spasms, but it can be prescribed where other treatments either haven't worked or haven't been tolerated. But again, it's the postcode prescribing with Sativex and whether it would be available or not. But out with Sativex, there are other options. So if you find that you're getting to a high dose of baclofen and it's having the side effects affecting fatigue, then it might be worth going back and getting a medication review.
Great, thanks. And Tanya's asked, what is a disability passport? Did you mention that?
Disability passport?
Yeah.
I don't think I had that in my presentation. Was it the diary?
Oh yeah,
maybe?
Possibly.
Don't know if you want to get clarification
yes, maybe
if I've missed something.
That, yeah. And Alison's put up a link to the MS exercise class online for the MS gym on YouTube, which maybe Alison is using. And we've had a question: if you can't go wild swimming or any kind of swimming, would a cold shower or putting your feet in cold water help with fatigue?
So if it's heat related fatigue, then it's all about trying to keep your body temperature as normal as possible. So feet in a cold bucket, cool shower, ice cold drinks, anything that can keep your body temperature down will help that with that heat related fatigue. So a lot of people, I don't know if I'm brave enough to have a cold shower, but I know a lot of people swear by it. But if you're brave enough, it's all about trying to keep cool. But a cool shower, maybe it's just enough. And sometimes even just letting your skin dry, putting a robe on and not drying so the water evaporates, that can all help cool down as well.
Yes, yeah, and just a reminder that we do have MS awareness training for employers in Wales. So if anybody is working currently and they think that their employer would benefit from our expert team of people with MS who are trained to deliver MS awareness training, just get in touch with us and we can set that up and arrange to deliver training. It's free with your employer in Wales. And Molly's saying she doesn't think that she realised the impact that heat has had on her in terms of fatigue. So what you're saying is making sense. So that's good.
Yeah, heat can definitely be. There used to be one of the tests before years ago, a hot bath test.
Mhm.
And because heat does affect a lot of people with MS, if symptoms became worse, it was an indication it could be MS. So heat is definitely a contributing factor, not just to fatigue, but to worsening symptoms in general.
Mhm. Okay. Thanks. Tanya's come back to us and said we didn't mention the disability passport, but she was advised to get one and just wondered if we knew what one is so she doesn't have to keep informing her employer of different symptoms. It's not something I'm aware of, but I'm happy to look into it.
Yeah, I've definitely will as well. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it's for the employer.
Employer. Yeah.
But no, that's a new one on me, but I will look into it as well.
And we have got a booklet for employers as well, which is
Yep.
available from order from our website. So that just helps employers know a little bit more about MS. And someone's asked, is the awareness training for employers only available in Wales at the moment? Yes, it is. So yeah, if you're in Wales, we can do that. Hopefully we'll be able to run it out across the rest of the UK at some stage. Any other questions, anybody? We put lots of good questions there.
Probably one of the things that I didn't mention too much was sleep, the importance of good sleep.
Yes.
And it can be quite common for people with MS maybe not to have good night's sleep because of symptoms. So things like pain or pins and needles, sensory symptoms often can feel worse at night because there's less distractions. And of course, if you have a poor sleep, you would naturally feel tired the next day. But if you have MS, fatigue on top of that. So again, trying to maybe, if there are symptoms that are interrupting sleep, then I would say always speak to your MS team, because generally there are things that can be done to help manage symptoms, and don't feel that you have to put up with it or for it to become normal. So if some other symptoms can be managed, then that can often make you have a better night's sleep, feel less tired, have a less of an impact on fatigue. And so yeah, definitely sleep can be, and sometimes even thinking about the environment, your bedroom, if you've got a TV, if you're on your phone or laptop, it's maybe just thinking about making it more conducive to a nice relaxing environment.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good sleep hygiene, isn't that how it's referred to?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you do anything on sleep, just out of interest, Jan?
So it's something that there's been more of an awareness of. I'm not sure if we've actually got anything on our website. I think the MS Trust have some information. And yeah, it's certainly been a topic where I think in general the importance of sleep has probably been underestimated in general, and there's been much more of a focus on looking at sleep and the benefits of it as well, and not just, I suppose a good night's sleep's an investment for tomorrow, isn't it? So it's maybe just thinking about it as part of lifestyle. So thinking about diet, think about exercise, you think about sleep, stress management, all these things. So it's maybe just taking a bit more note of it and thinking, is there any ways it can be improved?
Yes, definitely. Has anybody got any hints or tips that you'd like to share on the chat function for everybody else? Anybody got anything that they do regularly to help with fatigue, or any gadgets or anything that you use to help get a better night's sleep? Some people use those cold pillows to help reduce their temperature, and I've heard people talk about that. So if you've got anything you want to share. Listening to mindfulness tracks before bed, Molly does. So I know a lot of people use mindfulness just to get relaxed and get ready for sleep. Definitely helps. Cool bedroom, ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can keep the windows open, fans on, whatever it may be, it can just be more comfortable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I drink Horlicks every night. Yeah. Oh, we've got some hints for good sleep. Fiona's just put up the link as well. And Molly also uses a hot water bottle that's been in the fridge.
Ah, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. So effectively a cold water bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that would work actually. Yeah. Okay, anything else, anybody? Any other questions for Jen now that we got her here?
What I would say as well is, we're on the helpline, so if there was anything that people wanted to phone about, everything's confidential, but we've got the time to talk things through, and if there's any information that we can help with, phone us anytime.
I'll just put the number up there for everybody. That's our helpline number, 0808 800 8000, for anybody who doesn't already have it safely tucked into their purse or wallet. And Jen said Jen and Razia on the helpline to answer questions, anything about your health. So Laura said she uses the spoons theory quite well, use it with a range of neurofatigue service users. So
So I don't know if everyone's aware of the spoons theory, but it can be it's quite a good visual, where if you think, say you have a set amount of spoons each day, which will represent your energy levels. So, getting up, going for a shower might use a couple of spoons. A day's work might use up a lot more spoons, 3 or 4, and really the visual of the spoons is to represent the energy that's used for each activity and what you've got left at the end of the day. So it can help to think, well, you be more energy efficient and try and use less spoons all at the one time is the sort of goal with that. So it can be a good visual, the spoons theory.
Yes, I think a lot of people use that.
Yeah.
So Joy is saying, what can one do if they haven't yet been diagnosed with MS?
So I think it can be difficult because you're a bit in sort of limbo land as far as treatments go. It can be difficult to get access to MS treatments. GPs can still help with symptom management, and I mean, you can still access things like our online fatigue management course. That can still be accessed, it's free. So if there was any useful tips, although a lot of it may be more specific to MS, and I appreciate without a diagnosis, it is more difficult, but maybe even trying to get some of the hints and tips can help to manage fatigue.
Yeah.
But we also in the helpline, so we support people affected by MS, and that includes people who are either going through investigations, waiting on a diagnosis. So because you don't have maybe that MS team to contact for support, again, you can use our helpline if you wanted to talk through anything that we could support with.
Yeah. And remind me what time the helpline's open to.
So it's open from 9 in the morning till 7 at night, Monday to Friday, apart from bank holidays.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
And Alison says an old remedy for bladder issues at night is 10 milligrams of amitriptyline. She finds it works occasionally well with sleep as well as bladder.
So yeah, amitriptyline can be commonly prescribed for nerve pain, and it's a tablet that you would take at night because it does have a bit of a sedative effect. So if you find that nerve pain is quite troublesome at night, something like amitriptyline can help with that. The only thing with amitriptyline is that sometimes people may feel a bit drowsy the next day as a side effect.
Yes.
So it's not everyone, but some people may. So it may not always be the drug that suits everyone.
Yes.
Because it can have that sort of hangover effect, if you like. So that can sometimes make fatigue feel worse.
Yeah.
Side effects can lessen. So, they're more commonly experienced when you first start on a medication, and it may be that they lessen with time. So, yes. But again, if there's anything like that, certainly speak to the MS team and they'll be able to give direct advice about treatments that might be helpful.
Yeah, great. I've just put the helpline up because I realised I'd sent it just to us panelists. So I've put the helpline number up again there for everyone. And as Jen said, you'll speak to either her or Razia whenever you call. So Nikki's got a credit card, size card, explaining she has MS, she needs a toilet, sit down and have wheelchair access. and the
Yeah.
helpline number is on the reverse. I don't know. I think we send those out from the
Yep.
shop,
Yep, we
possibly.
can. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
send them out as well.
Yeah. So people can access those by phoning the helpline and asking for a. Is it a
It's
toilet
just
card
a little. But it can be for toilet, but it can just be if you need to
sit down,
or whatever it may be. It's more just an awareness.
Yeah, great.
You can get toilet cards from Bladder and Bowel UK, Bladder and Bowel Community. They're also quite useful, and I'm sure one of them has an app where if it's useful for people to just have that card if they need to go to a public toilet as well.
Good. Thanks for that. Tanya takes Tizanidine, and Sativex at night. Is this why she's waking up feeling exhausted?
So Tizanidine, what was that? Gabapentin?
Yeah, and Sativex.
Yeah, I mean, potentially they all can have side effects. Some people find gabapentin can affect things like concentration, maybe does cause a little bit of sort of that knock-on effect with fatigue. Sativex can make people feel maybe a bit lightheaded, nausea, sleepy as well. So yeah, potentially there could be a knock-on effect with the side effects, whether it's worth getting a medication review, even just look at the dose of it to see if that would help. But yeah, it can. Medications, if we could get a medication that had absolutely no side effects, it would be amazing. But unfortunately, they all come with some sort of side effect, and it's trying to get the best, trying to get one that will manage the symptoms without the side effects being worse than the reason that you're taking it in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes even looking at the dosage might just be a tweak that could do.
So maybe a medication review.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Does it matter what time you take the medication?
It depends on the prescription of it. So I think I would go to the GP or MS nurse to get a bit of guidance on that.
Yes. Okay. Great. And Fiona's put the link up there for the I Have MS card. So that's the little card that Nikki was talking about. Great. Thank you. Okay. So time, in terms of time for medication, just check with your MS nurse or your GP.